That's the biggest challenge because that's what people don't see.
Never do.
They see, the result of it all and draw conclusions about you from that.
Yeah.
They don't see the 20 or 25 years in the trench, and not, boo-hoo. Okay, we're not looking for sympathy, but a lot went into this.
I always say, I don't remember anybody wanting to trade or share or divvy that up back there in the beginning when it was lose your house and all of those stories we all have,
Exactly.
And that's the risk, but that's also the wonderful thing about where we live. So, welcome to the inaugural episode 1 podcast of Next Life.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. I'm here with my longtime good friend, Jack Brandt, who was CEO and founder of a lot of businesses. The main two was technology support and
TSI
distribution. He has a lifelong entrepreneur. Probably also you're an avid musician. You having trouble with the chair there?
I am having trouble with the chair.
It's kicking your ass.
Let me adjust it. There we go. Okay.
So Jack's a businessman trapped in a musician's body, or musician trapped in a business. I hadn't quite figured that out.
That's okay. Me neither.
He's both, a real creative guy. But thanks for being here. I think you probably, and we talk a lot, both of us do, but we sort of exemplify what we're trying to think about what a next life looks like after being all in on a business.
Okay.
Because we both have done that. Why don't we start with how you found your way down? Why don't we go way back to the jewelry selling days in college? I think that's probably how you found your way to entrepreneur. Am I right?
I mean, it was that and selling cars. So the story behind that is that I was at the University of Texas, and for a bunch of different reasons, I had the option of going home and living at home and going to U of H and having everything paid for, but living at home, or staying in Austin. And if I did, I was on my own financially. And this was, very much a kind of a 72-hour decision. And I elected to stay in Austin. There was a girl that I just started dating, and all my friends were there. And I started looking at that time, kids, you looked through the classifieds for job listings. And I was looking through the classified listings, and there was a listing for selling cars. And I loved cars. After selling them for a couple of years, I kind of liked them. Not as much as I did when I sold them, which is kind of a little bit of a consistent story for me. But so I started selling Lincoln Mercuries, new Lincoln Mercuries, in Austin on the corner of 6th and Lavaca, where now is Whole Foods and the Whole Foods corporate headquarters. And it was called George Coffey Lincoln Mercury. And across the street, we had the used car lot. And I sold new and used cars. I was 19 or 20, and I loved it. I really, really, really liked it. And it was a great way to make money. I mean, I had made more money than I had ever seen in one place in my entire life. And I was never going to do anything else but sell cars for the rest of my life. It was just great. And, they gave me a car to drive. And at the time, Mercury had this car called an XR4 Ti, a Merkur, which means Mercury in German, and it was kind of their answer to the BMW 3 Series. And they gave me one of those to drive. So I was driving that around campus and to the fraternity house and the parties and stuff. And I mean, I was
loving life.
Happy. I was happy, but it kind of got to be too much because I had gone back to school during that time. And selling cars and going to school, it something had to give. So it was actually my mother's idea.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. That I take some sterling silver, which was real big at the time, out to the flea market. So I went to a fabric store and bought a roll of blue felt. They gave you a picnic table. I bought a booth and spread that felt out on the table and some pieces of jewelry and made a sign. It said Sterling Silver Jewelry Company.
Where'd you get the jewelry from?
Yeah.
There's a place
here.
Okay.
It may still be around, but under a different name, but it's in Sharpstown, and it was called the NBC Bank Building. Nothing to do with the broadcasting company, just some bank called the NBC Bank. And all of the jewelry wholesalers were there.
Okay.
So it's interesting that you asked that, because that was one of the keys to it. Was not only was I buying there, but I would see the buyers from Saks Fifth Avenue and Neiman Marcus, and they were all buying out of the same wholesalers that I was buying out of, only they were marking it up 3, 4, 5 times, and I was only marking it up 1 time. So a lot of the jewelry, the silver jewelry that was the finer stuff, was made in Tasco in Mexico. And kind of the more molded, non-artistic stuff, shrimp earrings and things like that, dangle rings, I don't know if you remember those, that was all made in Singapore. And so you'd have these importers from different parts of the world that were selling.
Set you up as a distributor. Got it.
So I would come in on Thursday morning. I would go to the NBC Bank Building and do all my buying, spend the night at my parents' house, and then Friday morning I would get back up and drive to Austin, get to my apartment and price everything. And then Saturday morning, I had got a van that this girl that I was dating, her grandfather helped me get. It was a 40 Econoline cargo van that had 167,000 miles on it when I bought it.
Okay.
It came from Cisco Foods, and they had peeled the stickers off. So it still had the outline, though, the suntan of Cisco, and no air conditioning. And that was my car for 2-3 years. So I graduated college. That was my car. And we would take the showcases out, put them up, had some tables, and it just kind of grew. And we found very quickly that the flea market is, to many people, the Galleria. I mean, it is where they go to buy their clothes, their kids' clothes, toys for the holidays, birthday parties, produce, just anything you can think of. There's a lot of commerce that goes on. It's, I always said it was the trenches of entrepreneurship, because it was a good place to start, but it was also the lowest possible rung to start on. And did that for almost 3 years. So when you're out, and it's outdoors, there's no air conditioning, there's no heat, there's no nothing. So when it's hot, you're sweating. When it's cold, you're freezing. And we did that. And I say we, I don't want to ruin the punchline of the story, but the girl was Carrie.
Right.
And
who is now your wife?
Who is now my wife of almost 35, or maybe just 35 years. Plus we dated for 3. Don't seem that old. But anyway, and then, when she was studying for law school or a final or something like that, she wouldn't come. And sometimes I would get someone to help me and sometimes not. But regardless, those businesses doing that, selling cars and going to the flea market, put me through college. I graduated reasonably on time, but 100% debt free.
Nice.
Never took out a student loan. Never took out a loan for anything.
So you not only became an entrepreneur, you were self-funding, which is always the key.
Yeah.
You learn cash flow early.
And you learn if you're comfortable with debt or not. And at that time, I didn't see any reason to become comfortable with debt. And so, it was a great business. I learned a lot there. I used to say, kind of maybe not tongue in cheek, I learned a lot more selling cars and selling jewelry at the flea market than I ever did.
It's funny how many successful entrepreneurs go that route.
Right.
Like I learned a lot selling insurance, and I failed at it, but I learned a lot.
Exactly. So after that, Carrie graduated from law school. and got a job here. The idea was always to move back here because this is where both of our families were and are, and where we're from. And I started a computer supply business. And so we were selling floppy disks and laser cartridges and paper. And
About what year was that? You remember? For a time.
I am going to say that was around 88.
Yeah, you said floppy disk. So that's
88 or 89. Maybe it was closer to 89, 90, something like that.
Got it. And
it was a really good business, and we had some really loyal clients, big law firms and things like that. And they really couldn't beat me on price, and they certainly couldn't beat me on service because, my time was my own. So I didn't worry about deliveries and things like charging for that. I would just,
to get it there.
That. Right. But it became the thing for purchasing agents to buy from Sam's Wholesale, which is what it was called at the time. Sam's Club was called Sam's Wholesale. And Office Depot, and I forget what Office Max was called, but Bismarck. I think it was called Bismarck.
I do vaguely remember something like that.
And it just became the thing. There used to be a saying, maybe there is still, that no one ever got fired for buying IBM. And in this case, no one ever got fired for buying from Sam's or Office Depot or Bismarck. It was just the thing. And the bottom fell out of that business, and it failed. So I went looking for a job and found an opportunity at Telecheck. And Telecheck it was actually two companies. The franchisor was McDonnell Douglas, and there were a few franchisees across the country, but the largest one was a collection of Telecheck offices here that was rolled up under a company called Payment Services Company. And they were a Macintosh shop. And kind of nobody in the world ran not a lot of people in the world ran their companies off Macintosh.
Not at all, yeah.
Right. So to know how to deal with a Macintosh on a network, to know how to repair them, all those kind of things, it was all valuable. And so it was interesting. I mean, this is one of those moments. We've talked a lot about how life kind of comes down to these moments, and
completely
which way you go determines.
And you don't even know what they are at the time either.
Right. And you can only see those in reverse.
Much later years.
So this was one of those moments, and they had me take an aptitude test. And one of the final things was I went to meet with the senior vice president who was in charge of the data side of Telecheck. And his name is Jerry Goulden. And I said, well, how did I do on the test? And he looked up at me, big desk, big office, windows everywhere. And he said, poor. and I said, really, that's unusual, because I usually do pretty well on standardized tests. And he said, well, you probably did well for the greater population, but for a Telecheck employee, you did poorly.
Nice condescending tone you loved.
So, right. So I didn't necessarily go into panic mode, because I smelled a little bit of a game, and I said, well, that's interesting. I would really like this job. What would I need to do to improve to get this job? Well, I don't really know. I mean, this job is going to start at, I don't remember what it was, $26,000 in $1990 or $36, whatever it was. And I said, which was kind of low, especially for somebody who knew the Mac like I did.
Right.
And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'd come to them through a recruiting firm, what we would sometimes call a headhunter. They don't like that. So a recruiting firm. And I said, I'll tell you what, why don't you bring me on for 90 days. If I am not what I say I am with the Macintosh, you can fire me, pay me nothing, and I will pay the fee that you have to pay the recruiting firm.
He's got like that.
Yeah, except
bad.
I didn't have a dollar.
Oh, yeah,
to
that
my
doesn't
name.
matter. You know?
And I said, but if after 90 days you see that I am what I say I am, I want this, not that. And so he agreed.
Nice.
And I went to work there for 90 days. And at the end of 90 days, I got that bump because I knew there was nobody that knew the Mac better than I did. And so I worked there for 2 years, 2.5, maybe almost 3 years. And it was the greatest job ever. I thought I had the world fooled because I got to play with toys all day long and they were paying me for it. I was doing what I would be doing after work anyway, except they were paying me for it.
Right.
So the only problem with that job after a while was Telecheck was very much a data company. So they had as their key special sauce, everyone had a negative check writing database. So you write a check and the merchant keys the information and it hits a database that says, no, this guy writes hot checks all the time. Or that's a hot check, period. So you turn it down. We had a positive and negative check writing database. So what we could do was not just say, this is bad. We could say, this kind of doesn't match the pattern of what this guy does.
Right.
Get some more information from them. And if they couldn't produce that more information, then we turned that check down. And usually there was an issue. And the guys that were doing that, there was a company called DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation, that made a computer called
For some reason I
Fax.
remember that name.
DEC was big. And they made their platform, or their machine was a VAX, and it ran an operating system called VMS. And those guys, who were basically doing the same thing I was doing, just on different hardware, made more money. And I knew I had to go somewhere where my skill set was a profit center and not a cost center.
Right.
So I went to work for a guy that I knew, that I grew up with, who had a small systems integration company here. And I was there for about a year, and then I started my company. Now, the one interesting thing is, when I submitted my not termination, but what am I thinking? Resignation for Telecheck, the CEO, who I did a lot of work for because he was a huge Macintosh fan and just a huge gadget.
Which is a bit unusual back then.
Right. He called me up for an exit interview, which was shocking to me. And in fact, I just had lunch with him a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
Kind of catch up after the rest of the story. So we've stayed in touch. He's a great guy. And, he did a lot. In fact, he was early on a big YPO guy.
Okay.
And he's the one that told me about YPO and YEO and that sort of thing. So that was the first time I'd really heard of the organization. So I started this company, Technology Support, in 1994. I think it was either October 1st or November 1st of 1994. And we began doing IT stuff. Windows was new. The Mac still had a foothold in some industries, and I knew them both. Networking was just becoming a thing.
Really?
In the PC world. In the
okay, yeah, that's right. PCs were even new. I forgot. That's how old we are.
So, right, there was something called Windows for Workgroups, and that was the first platform that would allow you to network what was called peer-to-peer, so without a server. So you had machines networked together, and this was, this was mind-blowing. You could share printers on the net. So you could print something from your desk to something on another floor. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so that became something that we could do a lot of. We did a lot of networking, a lot of Novell networks. Once servers became more prevalent, we did a lot of Novell work. And then Windows NT was kind of the server du jour.
And were y'all doing subscription type?
No.
That was way later, because that was just early network days.
That was hourly. And I think we were at 95 an hour or something like that. And we billed just like lawyers and accountants. And
got a problem, come out, hook it up, whatever.
Right.
Got it.
Right. For projects, we would usually give a flat rate. Because you've experienced that with lawyers or accountants or whatever, where you need a certain deliverable and it just
but lawyers don't deliver. Let's be. Well, you guys actually had to deliver,
and the treadmill just keeps on going, and so we wanted to do something, from a customer sat standpoint where it was budgetable.
Sure.
It's what we were always striving to do, was make it budgetable. I had always wanted to find a way to bill in a budgetable way. And I found a way to position networks and phone systems, which is all very common now, but at the time it wasn't, as a fixed budgetable number. And Microsoft had just come out with a licensing scheme that, I forget what they call it, but it allowed you to have however many users you needed on a particular month for a particular application. That's all you bought. And so we could say to a customer, okay, well, you have 20 employees right now and they all need Office and they all need Windows, but you're an accounting firm. And so when January happens, that's when your busy season starts and you're going to hire 10 more people. Well, you can just license Office for those 3 months. And then when those contract workers are no longer at your firm, well, that expense drops off.
And you were saying license through you.
Yeah,
okay, got it.
Through a Microsoft authorized,
got it,
et cetera. And you had to actually be authorized through this licensing scheme. And just for the life of me, I can't remember what.
I do remember the license thing was a big cluster.
You had to buy them.
Yeah, there was expensive. And if you had a big office, it was insurmountable numbers.
This allowed you to pay $30 or $40 per user per month. And if you didn't need the instance.
So that was real attractive.
Yeah, because we could then take everything. We could bundle the hardware, the servers, the end user computers, notebooks, printers, and the software into a monthly budgetable number on a 3-year deal for any kind of customer.
Sure.
And the assets remained with us. They were buying a service. And that had some additional benefits when it came to collecting, because it was a service. And if we had to turn the service
you
off,
had reoccurring income billable hours instead of just a billable hours, a good month or a bad month.
Right. But if somebody decided they weren't going to pay for the service, we just shut the service off. And that made it real difficult for them.
Yeah, they paid.
Right. So it had lots of benefits, and I was able to then take that and kind of transition it into phone systems. And the clients loved it because it was one number that they paid every month, and everything was taken care of. If a phone, I didn't really care if they spilled a Coke on a phone. We would bring a phone back out. And so, unless we needed to make it larger or something like that, it was all covered under this monthly figure, and we were financing the equipment too. And that was very successful, and it is what we used to call in the industry sticky.
Yeah.
Because your client is generally, with you for that term. It would take a lot for them to really want to.
And that was somewhat new, because a lot of people, that's a crowded space now, but then it wasn't, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, everyone, that's just how things are done now.
Yeah.
With the cloud and everything else. You don't.
Yeah, no one buys servers anymore. Right.
Buy, the piece of the server that you use in a data center. And
so that was 94 to, you just kind of hit a curve, a growth through there. I mean, if you comfortable
94
sharing a
maybe
size
2000.
metric, what does that look like between?
We grew to about 5 or 6 million
Right.
in recurring revenue, and very standardized. You know, it was the same phones in every place, the same computers in every place. For a while, Dell even had a program where they would private label a PC for us.
I remember
So
that.
every all the guts said Dell, but on the outside it said technology support. But the warranty was done through Dell. It was all it was great. We really that was good stuff. And clients liked it, and it was new, and it was just not. It wasn't a Me Too thing. It was something different that
Sure.
we were presenting people. And we were, presenting it in such a way that we were saying, look, we've been putting networks in for a very long time. We know how to do this, and so that kind of transitioned into data centers and what we were calling co-location. And that's where you would put your server into a data center. And that became even more important after Harvey, maybe Harvey or Ike, I can't remember which, but because people lost power, people got locked out of their buildings. But our clients who had stuff in data centers, they just went somewhere else and plugged their notebook into the wall, and boom, up came their application.
So that was like,
everything
wow,
else.
well, you need to do that.
Well, we were doing it,
Yeah.
and that kind of became a thing. And we had some relationships with some of the larger co-location facilities like Cyrus One, and where we did all their small business stuff because they wanted cages, 5,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet, major banks.
But it fit right into your model, didn't it? Because you were already like, hey, you pay one fee. Don't worry about anything. Don't buy hardware. Don't
Right.
do it. If you call us, you got it.
So we just had our racks there, and we put the servers there and amortized the cost of all that into it. And now you were co-located. Now, we've been talking kind of about the industry, so we can talk a little bit about, my story. At this point, our CPA, who is an old friend, like from college,
Okay.
said, there's this guy, and I don't know if I should use his name because I didn't call him and ask him.
Well, yeah, I don't know that. Yeah. Well, you can talk in metaphors if you like.
Okay, and you should talk to him because this thing that you're doing takes a lot of capital, and it's true. So if we put $500,000 into a system, and over time, the revenues were cut. The next system would take all of that money, and he said you may want to work with them on financing some of this gear. And these two guys had come. They'd built a very big company when we were all in our 30s, and that they then took public, And I've told them this part of the story, so that's no secret. And I said, you know what? I'm not meeting with them. I work my ass off in this business, and they're going to look at this business and think it's cute, and I'm not doing it. And like only your friend from college can say, he said, dude, shut the F up and take the meeting. I went, okay, fine, I'll take the meeting. Well, it's
Under the premise of buying you, or was it just?
no, it was under the premise of them being a capital partner.
Okay,
and
providing the capital because you would need it for those
for the next
hardware
deals.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And we met, and they were the exact opposite of what I said. They said,
They were cool.
they were very cool, and said, you don't want to do something. You don't want to do anything with us. Do you know why? And I said, yeah, because the day I miss one covenant, you're gonna take my business. And I know, I may not be driving a Rolls Royce or a Porsche or a Mercedes or whatever, even a Lexus, but I know that I can put food on the table with this business, and I know that I can put my kids through a good school, and we can live in a good, safe neighborhood, and that has to be enough for these purposes. I want to take over the world, but
Right.
I'm grateful for what I've got, and we left on good terms, and so I kept doing that, and about 6 years later, that guy called and said, and we actually have this on a
6 years. I didn't know it was that big a I knew the story.
We didn't
about
talk again for 6 years. Not, for any reason.
Sure, just time.
Yeah. And he said, hey, can you get hard drives and stuff? and I said, yeah, what do you need? He said, well, I'm working with this company and they consume a lot of hardware and I'm not entirely happy with who's providing it to us. And I want to introduce you to them, but I want to make sure that it's a good fit. Let's have a conference call. So we had a conference call with one of the guys, and I said, you are able to do this. They were a data center, and in fact, they were the very first cloud computing company on planet Earth.
Okay, I didn't know they were first. I know they were best.
Before what we used to call the bookstore, which was Amazon Web Services. And they were first. Yeah,
they're not the bookstore.
That was the deal. We were
they're everything store now.
Well, yeah, but the guys sold to IBM, so it's
true.
So that company was SoftLayer, and they had a specific function that they wanted completed outside. They didn't want to have purchasing and accounting because they didn't feel like they would get the best equipment, and they wanted to outsource it. And that changed.
And man, you had not only the right place, but you already did that. You started with that.
Well,
selling,
and that was the
Sam's Retrade,
right,
and Cisco dealer, I guess, and all of that too.
And that was the irony. Was the mantra at that time in the industry was you don't make money on hardware. You sell hardware to get the services. And I always kind of hated that, but even me, I mean, the hardware is what you love. It's cracking that box open and there's a brand new piece of gear in there and you plug it in and lights start.
A technology person really loves that.
Big time. Big time. So we were never going to stop selling hardware ever. And these guys wanted someone to procure hardware for them, but also they wanted standardization and they wanted custom equipment.
Okay.
And when you're nobody, trying to convince Intel or Cisco or APC or SanDisk or
that you should customize or be something from, like, who are you?
That's exactly what
crazy cloud computing stuff. It's never going to work.
Never going to work. Let's just, sell these kids what we can while we can, but they're never going to make anything of this. And, I was just the man for that job because I saw the potential. Well, I'll back up. I said to Carrie, here's the deal. This is either going to be one and done. You're going to buy one big order from us and that'll be that and it'll be a nice year, or you're not going to see me for 10 years. But at the end of that 10 years, we're going to have a lot of options. Do well.
Yeah.
We're going to have a lot of options. And to her credit, she said, okay.
Well, that's what all good entrepreneur wives do.
Right. Except, prior to that.
They usually have good qualifying questions, though.
I didn't miss ballet recitals. I didn't miss parent-teacher conferences. I didn't miss anything. Not that I always enjoyed it,
of course,
but I didn't miss anything. And I was going to miss stuff. And that was a lifestyle change for us that we had to confront.
Because when you started, it went on a rocket rail immediately.
It was immediate.
And the timing was a huge part of that.
It was immediate. Cloud computing was just becoming something that the Fortune 1000 looked at. Forget about small and mid-sized companies. I mean, this was. It literally was catching the wave. I
remember how
before it became a wave.
Yeah,
it was incredible. It was incredible to be.
Because every time I talked to you, it'd be some insane new order level or something.
Insane. Or I had just hung up the phone with Intel and the CFO at Intel, who I had told, no, you're going to need to make this way if you want us to buy it. Go make it happen.
Because you had quite the swing as the distributor who was just making the mark through, but still.
I didn't know any better.
Sure.
I needed something to keep this thing going. Mm-hmm. I was going to get that something. If not from Intel, then I was going to get it from someone else.
Sure.
And it was the kind of thing you read about. They could make a book and movie about this. I hope one day that they do.
Yeah.
Because it was that.
It was that big a change. I remember that, not just from knowing you, but it was a massive shift going from, well, think of it now. Who owns a server? No one owns a server.
Well,
why?
And also think about things like WhatsApp or, think of any other, cloud-based application. I'm sure, Uber or Uber Eats or just anything you can think of that's an app. So other companies that were all in the cloud, think about that. Companies like Snapchat, or you open up Maps,
right? Or
just anyone that was in the cloud. That was all new back then, and a lot of them hosted.
And you told me, I remember at the time, that they had it down, building for whatever reason. We don't need all the super technical reasons, but they were better. They were first.
Yeah.
But they were also better.
Standardization and automation were two of the critical things that really made us better. The accounting system and provisioning system were written by one of the founders.
Okay.
And I don't mean like he consulted on it, like he
drew it up.
They wrote an accounting package from scratch.
Okay.
And a provisioning package. So the provisioning package would do this. You, Gary, want 10 dedicated servers. Okay. Now, the way that our data centers were set up, one could be in Houston, one could be in Dallas, one could be in Florida, they were all over the place, Seattle. But because of the way the network guys had designed the network, there was basically no latency. And so when you placed an order online, the provisioning system would look into the system and first say, and I'm generalizing all of this, okay, who's got that server built perfectly for this order? Well, Houston, Dallas, and Seattle each have one. Okay, those are now provisioned. And once the system said provision, it started loading software, operating systems,
quickly,
applications, all of that.
Got it.
Just started going. Then it said, okay, who's got something close and what does it need? Well, New York has 2, but they need more memory. And this one, so then it would, okay, who has the memory? And it would place, it would just set off this beautiful.
And the demand was off the chart already. And then when you had the perfect model.
Right. So our goal, I forget how many servers it was, but it was full servers within hours. No one else could do that. And so this provisioning system that he built really did. That was kind of the special.
And then your world from there was, fill this box up with all the stuff I need.
Well, or the very last thing, if it wasn't in stock anywhere, the pieces, if it wasn't in stock anywhere, that's when it went to the guys that we worked with every day who said, okay, I need 40 sticks of this and I need them shipped to that data center, or I need 100 SSDs shipped to this data center. How fast can we do it? And we had really gotten down the idea of the manufacturers holding inventory. And so they always had inventory, because if they didn't, we were going to find someone who would.
So you could work them against each other.
Really did, but ultimately the orders were so big. I mean, if you're
Command attention.
yeah, like Kingston Technologies. Are you familiar?
I'm
So
not. No, sorry.
they make memory, and they're privately held, but they're a big company, and I mean they're everywhere. They're in Best Buy, and they're in they're everywhere. We were their biggest customer 5 years in a row. Little old us in Southwest Houston, and that's mind-boggling. There were lots of companies that we were the number 1, 2, or 3 customer of, purely because of the demand that SoftLayer had. But it was fun.
And why do you think SoftLayer, besides some of the obvious reasons, why would they just, what do I need Jack for? I'd just buy a procurement arm. I mean, you think the growth, there was a combination of the growth, and obviously you guys were doing a good job of sourcing.
I think it was a couple of things. It was the idea that they never wanted to have purchasing under accounting. And that was
because you effectively were their purchasing department.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But that was proven. I would be in meetings with them where someone from accounting was there and said, well, why are we paying this for this hard drive when we can get this one for less than half the price? And this one was a hard drive that you put in a desktop machine at home, and this was a server. But they don't know the difference. Right. All they're looking at is the price. So we would have a terrible product, and what they wanted was the best product on the market.
And then they didn't need to worry about it. They had someone that was the architect.
Well, and there were times when we were able to kind of make the impossible happen, like APC, who makes big power strips and uninterruptible power supplies. And APC said, we will never make you a custom power supply, a custom PDU.
Never is a big word.
We wanted a custom one because there was a lot of room in this thing, and we could put more outlets in it. And the more, plus it had stuff we didn't need, so we could pull that out. Right. So every server that we can plug into a PDU is another server that we can put in a rack. And so I said to the guys that I worked with there, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go, Jack, on a fact-finding mission, and we're going to contact the top 5 PDU manufacturers in the world. And we're going to tell them what our buy rate is and what we need. And we're going to get them to quote us a custom PDU. And we will include APC in that. And when they refuse to participate, we will go down the road, we will get our custom PDU, and then we will stop placing orders with APC. And we will either have a brand new PDU that fits us like a glove, or APC will come back and say, oh, hold on a second, we were just kidding about that whole never going to make you a custom PDU thing. And that's,
we want that order.
Right. Orders going forward. And that is in fact exactly what happened. And I think kind of once I did that, they knew that they could just throw these things over the fence to me, and I would gut them and skin them and send them back as fillets. And that really.
So your life then, I do remember from being friends with you, or just you were all in. There was
all in.
There was hardly no
all in.
I mean, everyone has some story usually before an exit of some all-in point. For me, it was with the private equity we talked about before. But you were all in.
And I had an office in Singapore. I had an office in Amsterdam. I never set foot in either of them.
I do remember that, too.
And part of the reason...
You love travel so much. That's
I do. Yeah, I'm not a big travel guy. But part of the reason was I wanted to be at my desk, at my phone. If anyone, any of the C-level guys or just anybody from that company called, I wanted them to
manage
get me.
That. Yeah.
I didn't want them to get a receptionist. I didn't want them to get an automated, response unit. I wanted them to get me. And so, I had people that wanted to go out to lunch all the time. I ate the same Subway sandwich at my desk for almost 10 years. Everyone was shocked when I mixed it up and did a what's the guy's JJ or what's it, Jimmy John's?
Jimmy John's.
Yeah, when I would get a Jimmy John's, that was like a big deal. But I wanted to be at my desk.
And was you home much?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I spent about a week every month in Dallas.
Okay.
If they needed to go somewhere, if we needed to go visit the Seattle data center or anywhere in California, then I went. I went wherever they wanted me to be.
Sure.
And sometimes that was with a moment's notice, but that was just the deal. And the deal was, I'm going to be on a conference call at 2 a.m. because of the time difference between France and the U. Whatever it was, we were just on call 24/7, but it was fun.
Yeah. It is fun when you get on one of those
And
super growth curves.
Right.
Because I think because we both of you and I struggled lots of times in our business life, and it's hard. I always say an entrepreneur is either you're busy or you're busy or you're busy trying to get busy.
Right.
And that
Right.
busy trying to get busy sucks worse than the busy,
Sure.
So,
But it is, what you can see when you look in the rearview mirror and connect the dots. You see that, I became, only because of SoftLayer, I became one of the biggest Cisco resellers in the country. Mm-hmm. Well, 4 or 5 years prior to that, I had tried
to be a Cisco
to make technology support one of the biggest Cisco companies in the country, and I lost $500,000 doing it.
Wow.
And it hurt. Mm-hmm. And I didn't listen to my gut when I knew things weren't going right. I kept saying, I got to get out of my comfort zone and got to, and it failed. Mm-hmm. I mean, it absolutely failed. And it was, honey, I'm not going to be taking a salary this month kind of thing. And fast forward that 6, 7, 8 years
in the rock star mode.
Everything that I learned from that about how to deal with Cisco was what enabled me to be successful dealing with Cisco and SoftLayer, because I knew the game.
You knew the game. Been on both sides of it.
And so it was just another example of you can only really connect those dots in reverse.
Mm-hmm. And as you said before, sometimes you it's good, but you don't really know how good until you look back and go, wow, this doesn't always happen.
Right.
But I mean, you were aware of it because we talked about it a lot.
Right. So one of the things that, is a funny story is I would always go, and you subsequently went to, on an annual trip to Las Vegas for the Consumer Electronics Show. Mm-hmm. So what happens is the guys selling consumer electronics take up the convention centers, but the commercial companies, they just rent out suites, and then you have your meetings. And so when I would get to Vegas, there would be, like in the baggage, the guy with the little sign with my name. One of the companies would have an Escalade at my disposal the whole week. Mm-hmm. My breakfasts were all planned out. My lunches were all planned out. Dinners, after dinner, all of it. One manufacturer. Because
you were buying a tremendous amount of stuff. Yeah.
Right. And then the year after I exited, I got to Las Vegas, and I was kind of standing in the baggage area going, okay,
this is how this works. Yeah.
And then I walked outside, and there's this long taxi line. It was like, okay, so I got to get in that, huh?
Yeah.
And so it's sobering.
The dollar is fleeting.
Right. But that's why you need to enjoy it, while it's lasting.
So talking about that ride, so you're on the ride, you're humping it. I mean, when did you start? I mean, I know we talked at one point about, because I had already sort of transitioned to what I'm doing now, is helping people figure out an exit or what that looks like. When did you start going, maybe I'm ready for something else, or something else is going to happen, that transition to,
it was towards the end of kind of the 8th or 9th year, probably, when the financials started painting a story of what was possible. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that I knew okay, this is this is what I'm going to do. But what happened was during the course of this, SoftLayer sold to a private equity firm, who in turn sold the firm to IBM. And IBM came to me and said, look, we have a 6,000 person purchasing department. We don't need you.
Yeah.
However, we like what you're doing, and we want you to introduce us. We want you to smooth the transition, and we'll give you a year. And they did it for almost 3. So they really, put the jet fuel in the engine, and if it,
you could see that chart going some other.
Well, plus, it was incredible before, and then IBM took over. And, the craziest thing about that is when you have these receivables.
Well, the funny part, I'll interject, though. I remember you calling me then, and you go, I think this gig's up, because IBM bought them,
right.
And one thing I did say, because having a little bit of corporate experience, I said, it takes these guys a long time to figure things out, no matter what. So you got a little more time. Yeah. Turns out you had more time than you.
And it was great, and so the funny thing about that is, there's a saying, or was a saying, gosh, that's like having a receivable from IBM. My receivables were from IBM. Yeah. And so you look in sometime and you're
like, well, I've got one customer, but it's a good customer.
Well, okay, if IBM stiffs me and I can't pay this vendor and that vendor and this vendor, what are they going to do? Eat me?
Yeah. I had the same Exxon story in one of mine.
And so you just kind of go with it. Mm-hmm. And those were fun years, but they weren't adventurous years. That was almost like we had got the top spinning, and all we had to do was kind of give it a little push every way. There that battle wasn't there. That get up and fight for recognition and fight for what you were, not you, but what SoftLayer was entitled to from their level of purchasing. There's no reason they shouldn't have a custom SSD or a custom PDU or a custom anything. They should have whatever they want. Look at what they're consuming. No one should tell them no. And that was kind of gone. But it's hard to argue with the
well, and that in corporate structure, that seems to always invade.
It definitely took the fun out of it.
Yeah, it just does take the fun.
Because it just seems like they're not interested in, and I get it, but they're not interested in making the product better or the company. They're just interested in keeping their jobs. It's not doing something.
Yeah, don't get fired. That's
it. It's don't get fired.
Don't get fired.
What decision won't get me fired?
Which is funny, because that seems to be all the exits I talk to. And then now I'll get the question. Well, why? Why are they that way?
Yeah.
I wish I had that answer for you. I don't know.
Because some people want to be entrepreneurs. And some people want a job that they leave at 5 o'clock. Yeah. You know that an entrepreneur never leaves.
Never.
You're always thinking about the business.
Yep.
You go to sleep thinking about the business. You wake up thinking about the business. You're at dinner thinking about the business. You're in a movie thinking about whatever it is. You're always thinking about the business. Yeah. And people,
they don't know. You can't explain that. Well, it's hard to. I don't think you can.
And it's okay. Not everybody wants to do that.
My wife's quick to tell me that a lot, astutely so. There was a place for everyone.
Right. Right. Some people, I get it. They want to go to work and they want to leave at 5 o'clock, and that's totally okay. And a lot of people do that and make, I
always say, as an entrepreneur, you got to get good at deferred gratification, one, and the unknown. If you're not comfortable with the unknown, then probably not a good place for you.
Yeah. And that's, a lot of it is the unknown.
Sure. Sure.
You kind of reach that jumping off point when the bank doesn't want you to personally guarantee things anymore because you just can't.
Yeah. Or it's more than you got, so it doesn't matter.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's like,
you
okay.
just can't.
Whatever.
Just can't.
You know?
Even if you did, you'd never be able.
Yeah.
You know.
Borrowing more than you got or going to think you're ever going to have. Been there, done that.
Yeah.
That's a leap.
I mean, you
That's a
look
leap.
in and you've got receivables of $60 million, $100 million. I mean,
yeah, what is that?
right.
Exactly.
I mean, if they don't pay me and I can't pay,
And we're all done.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
You borrow enough to be partners. That's the Trump motto, I think.
Oh God, absolutely.
Just
Don't get me started.
Oh yeah, we're not going to go down
Get
the
me started on that.
politics road.
But that is, that's the saying is if you owe the bank, $1 million, you have a problem. If you owe the bank $10 million, they have a problem.
And we're partners.
And that's
what are we going to do?
right. That's the thing. Thank God we never came to that.
Sure. Sure.
But it was a ride.
So the thoughts, the boredom definitely was creeping in. For you, boredom, it's a monotonous. But was there other things going, man, I may want to wind this down and do something. I mean, when did those thoughts or how did those thoughts enter?
So, what had really started for me was I had been in bands all my life. And
I don't know if we covered that you're we did cover you're a musician in a businessman's body. You're a business. I hadn't figured out.
And I had started writing, and I had gotten some encouragement from some very, well-known but respected and people whose opinion I respected about my songwriting. Mm-hmm. And you heard some of them. I played, I played them for you too. And so this idea of, I'm in my early 50s, I could do this. I could start writing and I could start pitching, and this stuff isn't half bad. And it's a horrible road, but I wouldn't have to be a starving musician. Just,
that was the part you always tell me you didn't like being in. That was one of the reasons you didn't choose. You didn't like the starving part.
Oh, I didn't. I'd already had
never
a business. I had already sold cars. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had already been eating good food and staying in nice places. I was not into bologna sandwiches, and flea bag hotels. Mm-hmm. So I really started in earnest writing. Mm-hmm. And but there also is this part that you feel responsible to manage. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, all you can do is manage the financial aspect of your life, and you don't get to write. Mm-hmm. And so it was, and still kind of is, writing, and now it's maybe writing to just put out a record and see, what happens and say I did it and have something.
But you knew, time is not going to be a problem. I've got this to jump over here, dude.
Yeah.
That wasn't.
I am absolutely not opposed to doing nothing. I am all good with doing nothing. I can sit out, by the pool and drink a beer and listen to music and play.
But that wasn't always your life. So, let's
right.
To transition to that. I mean, did you sit around and go, why am I doing this? Or did it just sort of evolve?
Tell me what you mean.
Meaning, did you sit there and say, I've got to do something different? I've got to get out of this and go this songwriting route and all, or did it just kind of evolve and then I know it ultimately you exited a bit different than other people. You wound it down, which was the right call. I mean, you and I talked about options and and you're like, I'm fortunate I've made a ton of dough here and it's enough. And
it definitely was the idea that, It was going to end. I mean, believe me, if it was still going on today, and I was IBM's, now I think it's IBM Global Cloud Services or something like that. But if I was their one purchasing, I'd still be at it. Mm-hmm.
You don't think the tug of songwriting in another life would have changed that?
I think the responsibility.
I know we're talking in metaphors of what if, which is hard.
It's more the responsibility and the idea of, if this opportunity this gift is presented to you,
It's a nice way to say it.
do you walk away from it? And while I love playing guitar and I love writing and I love singing and playing my own stuff, if I was still looking at a line of business that had the revenue that did, I would feel irresponsible not to continue doing it. I wouldn't feel like, oh, I'm an artist and enough of all this money
So
stuff.
for you saw that wind down. It just sort of fell into place and made sense.
The timing, was really good, and I talked to a few people. I mean, you were one of them, and said, I think this thing's going to stop. They haven't really said it, but I kind of feel like it's going to stop, and I think, I think I'm just going to ride off into the sunset and not deal with this stuff for a while. Now, there were two companies that if those companies became available, I felt like I would have to buy them and go back into business. But otherwise, I was going to just try breathing.
And you wound down TSI distribution, just wound the orders down and done, and then you sold technology support.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I, technology support was a small business at that point, and it was being run by a couple of relatives of mine. And they, the idea was once I wound it all down, I would sell to them TSI, finance it, and what I wanted in return was to stay, an amount. I didn't feel like I should give it to them for nothing. And I wanted to stay on the insurance, and I wanted them to stay in the building that I owned that the company was in, paying a, reasonable market rate rent. And that was the plan. And what my salary was, because I was still taking a salary out of that business. I started it. There's no reason I shouldn't have been taking salary out of it. The idea was when my salary came out, there would be enough to pay for the rent, the insurance, and the amount, the purchase price. And by the way, that was, not with any teeth or any kind of, I'm going to take your house. There was no, nothing. It was, I'll finance it, and it's going to be this much a month. And when I leave, there'll be this much a month that can be used to pay the insurance and the rent and the nut, and the rest of it, you guys do with whatever you want. I don't know the full story. I know that they engaged an attorney, and I recall hearing the attorney telling them this was the worst deal he'd ever seen because, a business that's profitable with no interest loans and no security. Anyway, don't get me started. But anyway, so essentially they decided it would be easier to steal it. And they called a bunch of clients and told them that they weren't going to buy the business and that I was going to sell it to someone else. And that would mean that the people who were running the business were not going to be managing their networks anymore. And did they want that? And a couple of those people were really, I counted as very trusted and close friends. And they believed it hook, line, and sinker. And they conspired with them, really. They waited till I left town, went on a ski trip.
Nice.
And then they did all this. And then the other three that were part of it got up and walked out one day. So I ended up, there was litigation, and I ended up selling the business to another guy who has a similar business in Houston, who is a super good guy and has a really good company. And it was fine. We had to structure a deal that was much different. But I just decided that there was nothing that those bad guys could pay me, because I knew what they could and couldn't afford. There was nothing that they could do that could move the needle.
Right. And you had done well on TSI distribution.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so it's like it just was unimportant. Yeah, it wasn't unimportant.
So I sold it to someone else and rode off happily into the sunset and was very happily in the sunset.
So that's what I want to talk about next, the sunset.
Okay.
So the first day, the first week, I mean, you and I have had these conversations together, but the audience wants to hear.
Okay.
So what did you, that first day, that first week?
Yeah. So I had talked to a couple of people. I talked to my father-in-law. I told my mother, don't be surprised if you see me not going to work anymore, because I think I'm about to retire. And so, this was my, I'm going to take a copyright on this because I think you used it.
We're going there for sure, because you get to go, you use the line, it's your line.
What I believe I called you that first week,
did.
and we talked, and I said, you said, what do you think? It's like you had already retired.
You had already
sold.
Let's use, we've moved on to our next.
All right, fine. So you had already gone on to your next adventure.
Correct.
And I was, looking at the horizon for the first time in 10 years.
So with the horizon, like in my world, was who did I owe? What did they owe me? Those were like a chirping
I was just
devil
looking
bird.
at the clouds. I mean, I hadn't looked up and seen clouds in a long time. And so I said, man, I'll tell you, what this is like? It's like, how Saturday is kind of like the world is your oyster, because Friday night you can stay up as late as you want and sleep in on Saturday, or you can go to bed early and get up early on Saturday to go fishing or go do, whatever you want to do. Saturday, you get to do whatever you want. And then Saturday night, you get to stay up as late as you want or go to bed as early as you want. So you can either sleep in or get up early on Sunday. But Saturday's like the only day where you get the night before, the morning of, that night, and the next morning, all in a package. You said, this is like every day is Saturday.
And that resonates, man.
And that was, and that it stayed that way for 7 years. Every day was like Saturday. I didn't have an alarm, I didn't have an agenda, but I had meetings.
And I know you and I talked at first where we're like, you fill up the time. That's not a problem.
Right.
But then you're like, wow, this seems busy compared to my old life. This is not really busy.
Right. And everyone said, oh, you and your wife are going to, hate each other. Yeah. You're going to be in each other's way. You're going to be yelling at each other all the time. It was good for us. Yeah, we got to spend a lot of time together, just doing stupid stuff, going to the grocery store, going to pick up the cleaning or whatever. It was really good for us. And then, the other thing I heard was you're going to get bored. You're going to buy a business. You're going to have to leave the house. I never got bored.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting you say that, because I didn't either. And I haven't. But my theory on that is entrepreneurs that are successul were usually not that boring of a guys. Some people are. Now, I always tell people, if your happy place is your desk, die there. That's cool. But I'll get a fierce argument every time. Well, that's not me, Yeah. And it's like, okay, well then, what are you doing about it? Have you ever thought about it?
I mean, we know people who to them it is kind of the great game of business, and they always have to be in a game somewhere, and they enjoy that. And if that's your deal, then that's your deal. We just got finished watching that show Succession.
Yeah, I've not watched that.
Oh,
people
you
told me to watch
it. Yeah, you'd like it. Okay,
I think I watched one episode.
Spoiler alert it. No, we watched one a day for whatever, a month, and you'd like it. Yeah. But that was kind of his thing. I don't want to spoiler alert it now, but that was kind of his thing. He was an older guy. He's kind of the people that I can't think of their name now. Murdoch. where, he's an older guy, but he's still out there in the game every day. It's the same as Succession. It's kind of patterned after him.
Got it.
And he was a guy, he just loved the game and was just always looking for a deal and always looking for, a negotiation, and just lived for it.
That's what I tell clients. There's no wrong answers for anybody.
Right.
Just answer
what you want to do. I mean, that's the idea is selling or closing gives you the ability to do whatever it is you want to do. You want to go buy a boat company or a fishing rod company or start a whatever.
And the other thing I always tell them is you will exit your business. There's 100% chance that will happen.
Right. One way or another.
Now, it can be in a buy and box.
That's right.
But we get to pick as entrepreneurs. We picked our life. We're very, subjective about we want to do this and not want to do this. I mean, we pretty much don't do what, the establishment tells us anyway. So,
pretty much. Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, we play the game.
Right.
We play the game.
Right.
So every day was Saturday. Do you, family life changed that much? I mean, you talked a little bit about you and Carrie, and I know your kids are college, so they're done with us once that happens.
Yeah,
anyway.
right.
We don't matter.
The younger one wasn't in college yet. She was still in high school. And that was, the older one was in college when all of this was happening. And believe me, she benefited. But the younger one was still in high school, kind of when it was in the middle and through the end. And so that was nice to be home when she got home from school every day. It had been a long time since you had heard kids come in the door, and I just...
Or the ability to even go do things. That's what I would like to pick them up or to do something.
Right.
I mean, I was fortunate. Tiffany used to get up at 2, 3 in the morning and do tax returns, and I had to, because she would pick someone up, just because the hour would work like that. But
no, I always filled my time. I always had something to do. I never felt bored, and I never felt like I made the wrong decision.
So you didn't look back. You didn't go back and go, man, I should have stayed a little longer.
No.
You did none of that.
No, none,
I don't think that's
zero.
As big a issue as a lot. I think because as an entrepreneur, this is my opinion, you have to make decisions quickly. You can't sit around and ponder about life in the world too much when the world's hitting you in the ass.
I mean, but when you're running the business, or when you're thinking about exiting the business, I mean, if someone is there with an opportunity, you kind of need to make a decision or move out of the way. And so I didn't want to stay around and try and find new clients. I was fortunate enough to have had that
timing. I see that over and over. It's just timing. I mean, in your case, you could see it winding down, and we talked about the lightning bolt struck. I mean, you can't. And for me, the riding the oil field wave and having the private equity and that timing, you can't plan it, but you better be cognitive to it.
Right.
That's what I do see. I mean, we've had people come to us, hey, well, I want to sell now. I want to wait. I'll wait. And then COVID happened, or I want to wait. And then they got, it doesn't go on your schedule. I've seen that.
I mean, nothing does.
It's kind of crazy.
Really I mean, that's the deal, is nothing is really schedulable. But that can be fun.
Sure. If you embrace, that's the entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You better
that
embrace
was the fun part. We need to be, I'm in Houston and it's 7:00 at night and we need to be in a meeting in Dallas at 8. Okay, hopping in the car or get on the plane and get there in time for that. So that was always the fun part.
So you and I are real close to the same age. Do you think that played a role in any sort of decision making? I mean, I'm 58 here. I think you're right.
59,
59, yeah.
I don't know. I think that. I mean, I would have loved to have been at 40, 39.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have bothered me one little bit. So, if anything, I mean, it's just the idea that, you and I both know that we're not going to live forever. And, God forbid we die anytime soon, but we're not going to live forever. So taking that opportunity while you still have a quality of life.
Yeah,
because,
that's a good point.
You
get old, you can't do as much.
well, and your back starts hurting, or you get this thing, and you got, it just happens. Things start, breaking down and wearing out, and so I do feel like part of it is a state of mind, but I also, I do a lot, as you know, I do a lot of exercising, and I'm very focused
Diligent,
on how
focused.
I eat. And I make time. This morning I didn't think I was going to have time to get my bike ride done. I got it done. It was an hour and a half ride because I'm training for a big ride in a couple of weeks. And you just have to.
Are you in? Do you think you're in better shape because you don't own the business? Because at the time, I know.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
definitely myself because it was so hard to fit that in.
Yeah.
No matter how hard you tried.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. But
And I remember in our forum, you remember Dan used to say, "Get up! You just got to get up at 4.
Right.
Be And then I did that and it sucked.
No, it's horrible.
And then he's like, "Well, do it 2 weeks." And then I did it 2 weeks and it sucked on the third week and it was not me.
Yeah. I do on some days get up early and eat and then get my ride or my swim or whatever workout I'm doing in so that I can then have the rest of the day. But I not at 4 or 5.
Right.
Yeah.
So back to the business. What do you miss? Everybody usually misses something. I have a small bit of it that I miss, but then another part I don't miss at all.
I
Have you thought about that, or is there anything? May not be anything.
I don't know that I really miss. I do. I kind of miss being around some of the people I was around every day because it was fun. And they were fun people. I don't miss other people. I don't miss having to manage employees, finding them and managing them.
That seems to be a consensus I always find.
I just don't, and people just, I don't know. I don't want to say what, my hypothesis on what people do or don't. I'm comfortable not having to boss people around and kind of being the boss of me. Cause I know I'll always deliver. And so, I don't miss that. There's some things I miss, like, you have a holiday luncheon or you have, those kind of things were cool.
Yeah.
I definitely, kind of missed being the guy in a way, even with vendors.
Sure.
Because let me tell you.
You're not a good entrepreneur if you got a little bit of an ego.
Yeah, no, I hope I have a lot of an ego.
Yeah. Well, if you don't, you're not a very good entrepreneur, usually.
But, I enjoyed, like I do this MS 150 bike ride every year and all the vendors would always donate, as you do. And thank you again. But the second it all stopped,
yeah.
I think they actually blocked my number. I can't even call any of them anymore. And so some of that I miss, like just being a guy whose phone always got answered. The phone call always got answered. I was one of American Express's largest customer.
I loved all those black card point stories you told me.
All of it.
There was some crazy amount of points you were getting.
It was nuts. Yeah. And I had a dedicated liaison at American Express. It's just crazy stuff.
It's funny when that stuff goes away.
Immediately.
Even just the points, I had some insane amount of points. I'm like, I'm going to buy my way up to 1K this year.
No, it all goes away.
Yeah.
But I don't really necessarily miss it. I really like my life and my schedule and
what I think it's cool with you, and I preach this to people I work with, is do you try to retire to something, and it doesn't have to be the next thing of taking over the world. It can be a simple. It doesn't matter. It's your choice. But without that, but interestingly enough, so far the people I've worked with, it's not been a big issue, because there's something.
I think fishing. Or even, you and I kind of both learned the stock market as it applies to us.
Well, we both have, how much have we talked about our job now is making sure our money don't run out.
Right. So that becomes, work. It's just that it's work that you can do in a couple of
Well, and in both of our cases, education, because we're not good at trusting people. Generally, as an entrepreneur, we don't take blind advice very well.
No.
So we've had to learn that world a bit. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think that helped you a lot, but you're also moved on. Let's touch a little bit on your new next that you've jokingly said every day is not Saturday, but I really enjoyed seeing a second ago you dealing with an order, just to break your cycle of it.
But I enjoy that as much. That was a $300 order, and I enjoy that as much as I enjoyed, a $1 million or $10 million PO. So what happened was there were two companies that I always said if these became available for one reason or another, I would have to do it.
And they were passion companies. They were in your passion bucket, not your.
Correct.
This has got to be the next biggest deal.
And I don't want to name names on one of them, and
I know the reasons, and that's okay.
Yeah, but they are both guitar-related businesses, and they are both close in proximity to where I am, and I was able to obtain control of one, and the assets of one, but it's only been about 8 weeks. And so I went to work 8 weeks ago, and it's way more work than I anticipated that it would be. It was basically, it's basically like a startup. And
that's been a long time ago for both of us, startups.
God.
Well, I had one bad experience I told you about.
Right, global.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a start. I don't know what you call it. Terrible angel.
This was the kind of thing where we don't even we don't know we're running out of something until we run out of it. And then we don't know who the vendor is. And so I have to go.
You're building it all from scratch again.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it has been fun on a lot of days. The response from the users and the customers has been phenomenal, but it has not been without its speed bumps. And I wouldn't say that I am pouring money into it, but it is, every dollar that I invest in it, I have to think about, what's the end game here? And so, I'm.
But I think you've been, or at least my perception is, you've still been able to keep the quality things, the exercise and the scheduling and you have money. That's a biggie. We were starved. You remember early, every dollar we made went back to the business, and then that had to return to something, and then that was life and death the entire time.
Well, but we also, used to say about our businesses, this has to work. This.
Oh yeah, there's failure.
Work.
That failure or no option is for real.
But see, I feel the same way about this business. My ego can't allow this thing to fail.
Sure.
And it's not gonna fail. And so, yes, God willing. And so, it's been fun. There's been a lot. I definitely have not let my health suffer. And that was one of the things that I have a partner in this business. And that is one of the things that I told him. He's a younger guy.
He said, this is my deal.
He's going to run it. And I'm going to kind of get the front office straight and up and going. And I said to him, one of the things that I will not allow this to do is impact my health. So I'm not going to miss my workouts. I'll be here after I, finish and so forth. And I've been successful at that. Now, today, I knew I had to come out here. I had to deal with something this morning. So my ride was supposed to be an hour and a half. It was an hour and 15 minutes. Some days you have to make those
15-minute compromise you could do.
But I didn't not do the ride.
Sure.
And so I still have that quality of life. And Carrie's been, really amenable to it as well. Especially, she keeps telling everyone she wants to meet Green Day. She wants to meet Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day. So we may have to make a guitar for him, and
there you go.
That way I can get her to meet him. But
well, that's what I think is cool. I always thought of you as a very creative guy, and so I think this is a chance to do both.
I hope. Right now it's been a lot of administrative, operations kind of stuff.
Yeah, but you set that up, you can get a system. And for the systems that we did create, we created systems.
We had some systems. Yeah. The system was ask me. I don't know.
Exactly.
Just ask me.
Figure it out.
Figure
it out as we go.
Yeah.
So.
And so that's my life now. And I wouldn't say that every day is Saturday, but it's a good Friday. I can leave early.
Yeah.
And tomorrow might be Saturday. Just depends.
Well, you definitely, you're more relaxed. That's a given.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't, I would do my partner a disservice if I took the approach of, well, this doesn't really have to work because I've already.
Well, that's not going to happen in your DNA.
Right. Right.
Entrepreneurs that have been successful, failure is not usually high on an emotion we ever want any part of.
He said to me, the other day, this has to work. You're preaching to the choir.
Said, brother, I know.
Right. I'm more worried about you than me.
Yeah, it sort of has to work for me now. And believe me, I did that half to half.
Right.
I know exactly what that
Absolutely.
is. Yeah.
So we're on the same page with regard to, and we're on the same page with everything. It's been my first experience with a partner.
Yeah.
And so I have to be hypersensitive to that. And I try to be hypersensitive to it. And so far, so good. That was probably my biggest worry was how will I do with a partner?
Yeah, you never had a partner.
Never, ever.
You would hear our partner stories and you would be like, I don't have that.
Yeah,
I don't know if I
worry
want
about that one.
Yeah.
But it's been good.
Yeah.
It's been good. And as we get things more on solid footing, it'll be even better.
Sure. Well, I'm happy for you, man. Thanks for spending the time. And I think doing the next pretty well in my book.
We'll see. We can reconvene in 6 months or 9 months, after it's been a year, and I can tell you. But it also seems like you're having fun and doing well.
Yeah. What I'm doing here and trying to create here, we've talked a lot about it to help it. And there's some, as corny as it sounds, there's some give back here.
Yeah.
I
believe that
somebody did knock on my door and said, "Hey, you don't have to do this." Matter of fact, I wasn't even for sale. I was just like, go get some more money.
Yeah.
I need to borrow some more money. And someone said, whom I work with now, said, "Hey, you don't have to do it. You can. That's cool if you want to, but there's this other route." And man, that was such an eye opener. And I think it's a good thing to tell us, because we put our suit of armor on every day as an entrepreneur. You go from survival, that's all it is to begin with, to the next step of it's okay, we're surviving, and then to making a little money, but what never happens is you never take that suit off.
Right.
You never take that pickaxe, and then all of a sudden, what I find is people older than us, a lot of them, they're 65, they're 70, and you're going, hey, you are going to exit, okay? Now, how you do it, no one's going to make you do anything, but here's some options. Here's some education. Here's some stories. That's all I'm trying to do here. Now, of course, if someone wants to take the next step, I've got a path to help them. But, to me, it's more about building that audience first to understand. And
well, and you've had the experience of being able to talk to them on a level that they can understand, where sometimes those bankers and so forth,
absolutely,
they can't do that.
Yeah, I think, did I tell you the story of one of the latest ones? I'll remain nameless, but he was like, I got to tell you, I feel really comfortable now. You explained this whole exit process to me, but I got to tell you, it's just you and I here. I barely got out of high school. And the guy makes a couple of million a year with his business. And I said, well, congratulations. The guy that just left, he got way out of high school.
Yeah, right. Right.
And
which side of the table?
A little secret is we're the checkers on that checkerboard, and we're much more important, and no apologies needed or accepted or ever going to
Right.
You know? And that's what I want to do. I want to be able to say, hey, I am fortunate. I've been on both sides now. And I like it. I like the M&A side. I do. I think it's interesting to sell the whole widget, as my wife would say. You know, you're just selling the whole widget, you know. You're not just selling one thing. You're selling the whole thing, you know, which was a hard concept to grasp at first, but it's really the truth.
Yeah, you know, I will tell you that it's funny. Anytime I'm driving on the highway, usually it happens on the highway, and a truck with drill pipe.
You see the thread protectors on the back,
and I know what the colors mean.
Yeah.
And I used to tell Carrie, and she's like, okay, I know what Tenaris is, and I know, you know, it's purple, and I know, you know, and no, or I'll say, you know, my buddy invented the industry of recycling those, and people really, you know, no one really notices thread protectors until you point them out.
Well, you know what's interesting is having worked with more clients now, it's all about the niches. It always is.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say there's some guy that's selling the wheels on the bottom of that chair.
Right.
You know, and doing quite well.
Yeah.
And what else does he do? Pretty much that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's always about the niches. And, you know, and people think I've got to come up with the next Apple or it's about it. I mean, look at us. We ground it out until, you know, you could argue we both had breaks, of course, but how long did you slug it out?
Right.
20 plus years before that opportunity came along.
That's the biggest challenge, because that's what people don't see.
Never do.
They see, you know, the result of it all. And draw conclusions about you from that. Yeah. They don't see the 20 or 25 years in the trench, you know, and not, you know, boo-hoo. Okay, we're not looking for sympathy, but a lot went into this. Yeah. You know, and so not to in any way, not say I'm fortunate, blessed beyond belief I am, but I always say I don't remember anybody wanting to trade or share or divvy that up back there in the beginning when it was lose your house and all of those stories we all have, you know. Exactly. And that's the risk, but that's also the wonderful thing about where we live. You know, you can pick. I mean, you could take this guitar thing to wherever you want to take it. Right. With as little as a DBA to start that. I mean, that's a fabulous. Yeah, it's incredible.
Win the sperm lottery thing to be here. To
be an American.
To be able to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I agree.
Hopefully we can hold on to that.
And edit out sperm.
Yeah.
We can. But.
Well, we can say sperm.
Can
my
you?
I say anything I want. It's my podcast.
Say whatever you want.
Say whatever the hell I want.
It's true.
We're going Joe Rogan here. We're going to start smoking pot.
Does he say sperm? He smokes pot in his...
Yeah.
Wow.
Elon Musk smoked pot with him in there.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. I forgot all about that. Yeah, that didn't help. His
no, that didn't help for the stock. The SEC had a little something to say about
Seems like it's ended up okay for him, though.
I don't know. He bought Twitter and lost half of this. He doesn't care.
But money rename it.
Money doesn't matter to him.
Right. You know? Doesn't.
It's just never been a motivator for him. Well, cool. Well, thanks again for being here, Jack.
Thank you.
I think we might have a wrap on this. Let's ask our editor over here.
Okay.
All right. We're good.
Sounds good.
See ya.